Welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast. Our mission here is to encourage, equip, and empower every woman on her faith journey with Jesus Christ. Today, we get to hear from our director at Bridging the Gap, Angie Goetz, along with our podcast host, Mykelti Blum, and we are celebrating the Bridging the Gap podcast. Angie and Mykelti cover the origin story, the desire to provide a resource for Minnesota, and some memorable moments along the way with lots of laughter. They share how the podcast has evolved in depth, vulnerability, and authenticity over the years, as well as what it has meant to them personally. Mykelti shares about her experience hosting over the last 4 years and how it's increased her faith. This episode is full of fun facts, behind-the-scenes takes, dreams for the future, and hopeful next guests. Celebrate with us our 100th episode of the podcast by sharing with a friend. And enjoy.
Are you feel good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel great. I love this.
I'm so excited. Okay, here we are. 100 episodes. This
Unbelievable.
is it. I'm so excited.
100.
Ooh, so I'm Mykelti Blum, if we have not met yet. I feel like I don't introduce myself on here sometimes.
That's
and I'm
true.
like, people probably like, who is this girl? I'm Mykelti Blum. I am the podcast host and have had the honor of being the podcast host for 100 episodes. Mm-hmm. And I'm here today with the Bridging the Gap director, Angie Goetz. So welcome back to the podcast, Angie.
Always fun to be here, especially with you on the 100th podcast.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So crazy. And today we kind of have just a special episode. It's not going to be like a normal one, but we thought it'd be so fun just to take time and reflect on the podcast, talk about some of the memorable moments or just fun facts and things like that, just to celebrate all that has happened.
A little walk down memory lane.
Yeah. I mean, I really can't believe it's been so long. I was driving in today thinking like, I only had one kid when I started this podcast. And now, I lived somewhere different, like so much life has happened.
Yeah.
You were not the director when we started the podcast.
Yep.
So it's just, I'm so excited. And also just thank you to everybody listening, especially if you've been with us since the beginning, how it has been such an honor to have you join us in all of these incredible conversations and topics. And we're just so grateful for you listening. So
what was maybe you don't know, this is a surprise question. What was the date of the first podcast that aired? Do you know?
I don't know the date, but I know it was March
of 21.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Because Carol messaged me. It was in COVID. And I was really new to the Bridging the Gap team. So I, in 2019, was like, I want to start getting involved and things like that. And had just connected with Carol. And so I was just coming to meetings and just helping in other aspects. And she called me one day. It was the middle of COVID. I was super sick because I was pregnant. Just like so sick. And she was like, I know you have your own personal podcast and we have just kind of wanted to start one and not sure where to start. Like, would you be willing to jump on board and advise us? And eventually after advising a couple of sessions and like how to start one, she was like, would you like to host it? And I was like, let me quick have this baby. And then yes, I would love to host this podcast.
Let me quick have this baby.
So it was, right in the beginning of 2021 that we started to, I think that was 4 years. Yeah. I just had a moment where I'm like, is that right? Yeah. 4 years and in March. And it's been so cool to see all that we've done. And I mean, I was looking back as we prepared for this and I couldn't believe how many people we have talked to and how many people from just all stages of life and everywhere in the country and global speakers. And it has just been so insane. But, looking back at the heart behind starting this podcast, and Carol really, when she talked with me about it, I was like, I want to create a resource. I want to create another resource for people to just be encouraged and equipped and empowered. It was, when we started, it was actually called E to the Power of 3. That was the original name of the podcast. And it was with that in mind, that we were to encourage, equip, and empower every woman in their faith journey. And so I felt like we have done that in creating episodes that truly to the heart of it is how can we encourage you in your faith, and talking through a lot of subjects that sometimes it's really really, really intense and deep. And I'm sitting there holding back tears or, in a lot of ways. And others are super practical with just talking through, these are steps that I've got out of, or we talked about some leadership episodes and have encouraged leaders in that way. So it has just been such a slew of things. But what do you think, Angie? Like when you first were jumping on board with me and I'm like, hey, we have this hot podcast. I was like, please don't take it away from me. But like, what did you envision for this podcast?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I love the heart behind it. I mean, we filter everything we do at Bridging the Gap through that filter of, does it encourage, equip, and empower women and their faith journey with Jesus? And so that is still the heart behind it. That has not changed one bit. The thing that has changed, I think, is, and maybe not changed isn't the best word, but I feel like I've watched you grow so much as a podcast host, just in confidence, in depth of questions, the richness of the podcast itself. I feel like the vulnerabilities that I've seen between both you and our guests I feel like that's grown and changed. But the heart remains the same. So encourage, equip, and empower. And so that will never change. Right. So, but it's been fun to watch you grow with these, just such a variety of guests from, college presidents and evangelists and stay-at-home moms and entrepreneurs and politicians. I mean, we've had a lot of people, and international best-selling booksellers or authors, not books. They're not called booksellers.
Well, they sell them, so they're accurate.
Authors. They're called authors. But just the excellence of our guests that we have had. So no matter where they come from, we've just had some incredible guests.
Yeah, we really have. There has not been one bad podcast. And I'm not even just saying that, but like there truly has not been one bad podcast. And I appreciate you saying that. I feel like I have loved how much I've grown in the sense of just being more comfortable and connecting. And it's been so cool. To your point, we were just talking about this, I think, after the last podcast I did, where I have loved to see how we have grown in our vulnerability and just tackling just real subjects. Like I don't ever want to do anything surface level. That's not in my nature. And to see the guests that have come through here that are so willing to be vulnerable with their testimonies and their stories and things they've struggled with. Like I'm thinking of Kristen Peterson, who we just recorded with her a couple of weeks ago, and just being so open and honest about her struggle with forgiveness. And that's just, it's hard to be that vulnerable sometimes when there's hundreds of people listening to you. So it has been amazing to see just the depth, and the topics that we've tackled are sometimes hard. But the thing that I always do, and I know you and Kristen do it as well, as we kind of like navigate and plan and prepare, is we're very prayerful in who we want to come on and who can tackle each topic. Yeah. And there's been multiple times where we think like, this is a topic that I really want to discuss. For example, I really wanted to talk with someone about, how is God of the Old Testament the same as God is the New Testament, and what it looks like, and is the Old Testament still relevant today with how different it is, because that's a topic that gets discussed all the time with believers. And we prayed and we're really thinking it through, and then it was like Alan Tennyson.
Yeah, I was going to say that was an incredible podcast. He's such a great theologian, just a leading theologian within the Assemblies of God denomination, but he also has such a brilliant way of making it understandable to people who are not theologians. Yeah. And so I love anytime that we've gotten to have him on the podcast. Has he been on more than once?
Once, but he needs to be on again.
Okay. All right.
I'm speaking it into existence.
Add that to the list. I was thinking about, you were talking about vulnerabilities, and I was thinking about, I think I was sitting in my office and you were in here recording with Becky Meyerson, and you came out and I think you said, that's the first time I've cried during a podcast. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a good listen. So listeners, go back and listen to the Becky Meyerson podcast.
Yeah, that's that one. I have joked that there's been 4 times that I've cried on this podcast. And let me find out. I wrote them down. Yes, Becky Meyerson was the first one, because her heart and encouragement, and just, when someone is just radiating passion for what they do, like it was just coming out of her. And I just was so emotional about it. And then Dr. Tennyson, the way there's just one point that the way he was describing like the love of the Lord and how that is just beautifully orchestrated throughout the whole Bible. Like it just made me teary eyed, but I'm like, girl, you got to keep it together. Okay.
Yeah.
But I got really teary at that one.
If you want a deep theological dive that feels like even if you're a new swimmer, theology wise, it is a deep dive, but you're not going to drown. He throws you a life raft.
Yeah.
So
he so simply talked about it, and it was wonderful. And then the third one was Pam Lund.
Oh, yeah.
She talked about calling and the calling you have in your life. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, too, is people living in their calling and their purpose. And so that one just hit home. And then the fourth one, Jenny, which that one was just released last month. And I even on the podcast said, this is the fourth time I've cried. And I called it out. But man, we were just talking about joy. Yeah. And I actually feel like that podcast is one of the most I have had commented from other people on what they took away from it and how much they loved it. And she just so perfectly talked about joy, and she just caught me in a moment where I was lacking in my joy, which is hard, mom life. It is what it is. So she got me on that one, but so 4 times.
For the listeners, it's Jenny Senapataratna.
Yeah. Did you see me trying to dodge having to say her last name?
I saw you. I know. So for the listeners, if you want to go back and listen to Jenny Senapataratna talk about joy, and
her husband will be on. We've done a couple of recordings that have not been released yet, but he's on too. So it's been really fun to have that couple dynamic, and we've had a lot of married people on here actually, which I'll talk about. I've got a little bit of fun facts, but what are other things that, we're talking about what goes into planning a podcast, and just kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit of what is it like, and maybe common things people don't think about, what it takes to start a podcast and things like that.
Goodness. Well, it takes a team. It's not just Mykelti and a guest. So it takes a whole team of people. And so we have prayed in people to help that love the podcast and love production and sound. So we have Kayla Brisbane, who's a Chi Alpha missionary up in Bemidji. She helps with editing, if I'm correct. So Amber Gersman, our very own Amber Gersman, who many of you are familiar with at the Thrive Conference, that girl, she can do just about anything. She is so incredibly gifted. So she helps as well. She records the intros and outros. And then our very own Kristen Ostrom helps as well with posting. And so am I missing anybody?
No, I think that's
Did
everybody.
I get them? Okay. Yeah. I was like, I didn't have those written down. So I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. It takes a whole team.
Yeah.
A whole team.
And we're so grateful it was when we started out, you, me and Kristen, and it's been so cool to see so many people like, hey, I'd love to help with this. Hey, how can I help with this? Rachel Snyder helped for a season.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
She helped with creating intros and outros and things like that. So she was a podcasty helper at one point.
She's amazing. Yeah. She's got all those little babies at home. Right. So,
it's good to have such a team. But I think one of the things that people also don't think about it is just the time and commitment that goes into preparing. And I already mentioned it a little bit, but, I think both of us are very protective of what gets shared on the podcast and wanting to make sure that is honoring Christ, honoring what we believe. We want this to be something that truly is of the Lord and God honoring and things like that. And it's so cool to have so many different voices and so many different opinions that are on here. And so I pray a lot beforehand and of just, what do you want me to say? What is the topic? Because sometimes with our speakers, they're like, hey, just pick a topic because I want to know. And I'm like, that is so stressful. just like pick a topic. But to come up with the questions and just be praying that the Holy Spirit would be present as we're speaking and talking. And so it's really cool to see all of that goes into it.
And it's always fun to see, because you email questions to our guests and CC me on those. So I'm able to see the list of questions, and I know how thoughtful those questions are and how you have spent time thinking through those. Like, how am I going to get the most out of this guest and draw things out of them? And that's really beautiful to see. So, and you can tell you spend a lot of time on questions. And I know there's sometimes, we say after a podcast that, we could stand to edit this, change this, omit this, and we don't just take a podcast and just throw it into the airwaves for people to land wherever it might.
Right, right. And it's so cool at the end of every time I send questions to guests, I always say, I love that we can have these questions as a base, but I always love to see where the Holy Spirit leads us to. And there are plenty of times where I'm like, I think we got to 2 of the questions that I provided, and we just went with it and went maybe even in a different tangent than I thought we would. But to see what comes for it, I'm like, that's exactly what was supposed to be said and how it was supposed to go. Yep. So it's so cool
Holy
to
Spirit's
see how that
good
happens.
like that.
Yeah. So some fun facts. That was one thing that I was like, this would be really cool to just share a little bit of facts of the podcast. Our guest breakdown. So we have had, I did not include the people that we've already recorded with that have not been released yet. We've had 91 females, about 91 females. And for guys, we've had 17 guys on the podcast.
Okay.
And then we've had 16 two-person podcasts, which I thought was fascinating that we've had that many, where it was me interviewing at least 2 people. There was one we had 4 of us, and that's when we interviewed the Ruth Experience. Oh, so all 3 of the ladies and me were there, and we were just crammed in this little room, and it was so much fun to talk with them. That was way back. But then we've also had a ton of married people on together, which I couldn't believe it when I was writing these names down. I was like, I think there's maybe 5. Oh no, we have had the Vogleys, and then we had the Stallins. Is that how you say the last name?
Yep. Derek and Carrie Stallin.
Yep. And then the Grahams.
Yeah, Doug and Vicki Graham, president. Well, now no longer president in North Central. Doug and Vicki Graham. So
they were on there talking about parenting. That was so good. Yeah. And then Joe and Jen Anderson.
Yeah.
And then the Hagans.
Yeah.
So that was really big. Scott and Karen Hagan. And then Matt and Jill Reed.
Yeah.
And then Dee and Sarah Gibson. Awesome. And they're actually my cousins. And then Peter and Carolyn Haas, they were not on there together, but we recorded with them separately.
Yeah.
Jeff and Christy Kerr were the other couple. And Jeff was actually our first guy that we allowed on the podcast.
Awesome. He's a great guy.
He's a great guy. And yeah, Jeff and Christy, I think it was like the 4th or 5th podcast that we did. And they came on and they talked about gratitude. And I loved it. I loved it because it was it was released in 2021. We're coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of people were just struggling to find gratitude and thankfulness for things. And we released it right around Thanksgiving. And so that was a really good podcast. And I mean, if you know Jeff, he's hysterical and his humor is great. So that is a good one to go back and listen to as well. But I thought that was so interesting that we've had so many married couples on here.
That's really cool.
That were able to share their wisdom. The longest episode that we have, so there's one that's over an hour, and that was our live podcast that we did at a leadership conference where we talked about navigating difficult conversations in the workplace.
Yes.
And that one, people loved it.
Okay.
They really, really loved that live podcast experience.
Yeah.
So I think that it just brings a whole new element to it. And so that was our longest one. But when it came to podcasts like one-on-one, it was Sarah and Dee Gibson for 59 minutes. Okay. And they were talking about a relationship restored. Yeah. And that was one that I had a few people tell me that they listened to a few times actually to hear, because they share a lot about their testimony and sharing about how the Lord just brought them from dark to light. And it's been so cool. They actually run a marriage ministry now at their church, and a lot of couples. It's a large church, so it's been so cool. I mean, I've got a front row seat, they're my family, but to see what the Lord has done, and I'm so grateful that they were willing to come and just share a lot of the hard things within all of that.
Yeah. I remember that one. It was a good one.
Yeah. A few other things. We've had some guest hosts, which I'm very grateful for in times when I haven't been able to, or things like that. And so we've had a lot of people step in, which has been awesome. You being one of them.
For the very first time, just the other day. It hasn't aired yet.
No, it hasn't aired, but it was so good. I just edited it yesterday. I was literally mid-trip to the office and had to turn home. I had a sick kid, and Angie stepped in last minute and did an incredible job. So that is one. Yeah. And then Kristen Ostrom has done it. Stacy Bellward.
Yeah.
She did a few. I think one or a few.
Yeah.
And then Lindsay May,
the
founder of Truly Co., she interviewed 2 people. She's been a guest twice. And then Sonia Binder.
Oh, okay.
So she actually interviewed me for one. So it was like the second episode or something like that. But just so grateful for their willingness to step in and host. And I know you can speak from experience. It's not easy when it's
it's not.
Right on the fly having to do that. So I'm very grateful for their willingness to do that.
I had to hold 15 minutes of prep time. It was literally, it was great.
It was not a lot.
Fun fact is that the topic of that podcast is regarding family. And so it was kind of fun that Mykelti, of course, had to run home because her little guy wasn't feeling well. And so just that importance of prioritizing family. There's sometimes family absolutely has to come first no matter what. And so that was one of those times. So it's just kind of fun fact that was the topic of that podcast was the nuclear family.
Yeah. And I firmly believe that that's exactly how it was supposed to happen because I know that that's a huge passion for you and you have so much wisdom in that with raising 3 kids that are basically all adults now. And so you two did such a good job tackling that subject.
That was fun. That was with, you can look forward to it. That was with Dana Ross. So her and her husband pastor Celebration Church in Lakeville. And they have 3 amazing kids and they're just killing it as parents, but know the struggles too. So we all have them.
Yep. We all got them. No, it was so good. I can't wait for everybody to hear it. Places recorded. So we have actually recorded our podcast in a variety of places. Most of them are done in this district office. And that's great to be able to have that, face to face. And I always prefer when we can do it in person. A lot have been over Zoom just because, like we interviewed Caroline. I'm blanking on her last name.
Oh, yes. From Quebec, Ontario.
Yeah. It's a hard one. It's like
Bergeron.
It's so fancy sounding.
Bergeron. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. French.
Oh, and I absolutely loved having that conversation with her. And I mean, she's a life coach. She's a pastor. Like she just has so much to offer. So that is a really good one to jump back onto. So we've had some over Zoom, Mayo Civic Center and the Nursing Mothers Room.
Yes. Yes. Yay, Thrive Conference. We do what we have to do.
So it's always me in this office with this little fridge for the milk.
It's perfect.
But I actually love it. It's awesome. It's kind of been, my home at Thrive for the last 3 years and being able to do that. And it's great. It's a small room and you just get to connect and talk.
Hello, friends. It's Amber Gersman here to personally invite you to the 2025 Thrive Conference. This October 10th through 11th at the Mayo Civic Center in Rochester, Minnesota, thousands of women across the U.S. will gather for our annual conference. We are honored to have Jenny Allen, Lisa Whittle, and Angie Goetz keynoting this event with worship led by Substance Worship. Susie Larson is coming back to MC along with me, and we are eager to gather and confess our faith, just as Peter did with Jesus in John 6 when he said, "No one but you gives us the revelation of eternal life. We're fully convinced that you are the anointed one, the Son of God, and we believe in you." Come join us for Thrive, No One But You, where you'll be encouraged, equipped, and empowered in your faith journey. And there's so much more. Leadership development, tons of exhibitors, an amazing after party, and of course, everyone's favorite, the Thrive Shop, with lots of fun new apparel. Pre-sale a sweatshirt when you register online and shop on site. We are counting down the days to see you. Get your tickets. Bring a friend, and we'll see you October 10th through 11th in Rochester for Thrive 2025, No One But You.
I'm trying to think of the Thrive speakers that we've had. There were so many, actually. We had Natalie Runyon, Susie Larson, and then Carolyn Haas,
Hosanna
Wong, Gabrielle McCullough, and Amber Gertzman and Susie did one as MCs one year together. So that was really special. The first year, Andy Andrews, Brittany Jones, Havila, Yep. I think
Alex Seeley?
We didn't get Alex Seeley. She had to leave. So
yeah, that's the tricky part at Thrive sometimes. Like you're trying to catch flights and trying to jam a lot into a short amount of time. So yeah, I was just I thought of another one that I was like, oh wait, no, she couldn't stick around. So
yeah, but Carrie Newhoff.
Yes. Yeah. Charlotte Gamble.
Charlotte Gamble. Yeah, that was at Leadership Conference.
Yeah.
But we did get to interview her, and that was a big deal. That kind of leads into some of my like memorable moments. I was writing down, like, have there been any big moments for me in the podcast? And actually, Havilah Cunnington was, because that was the first time, I'm pretty sure that was the first year of the podcast, if I remember correctly.
It was, yeah.
And it was our first year down in Mayo at Rochester.
I remember.
And I remember standing there waiting for her to show up, and I was so nervous. I was so nervous because this was my first like national speaker interview. I was like, Mykelti, you better not mess this up. I was so nervous about it. And she was so easy to talk to.
Yeah.
And we just sat and talked about boundaries. It's a great episode.
Yeah.
And talking about boundaries and that you need to place, you know, in your life and friendships and what did Jesus do with boundaries and things like that. So I absolutely loved it. But that was a really memorable moment for me because I was like, oh yeah, wow, this is a big deal.
Yeah. But, you know, people are people.
Yep.
Like, we're all just a bunch of girls that are just doing our very best to love Jesus. And so it's sometimes we have to be reminded, like, she's just a human too.
Right.
So,
and that's actually one of the things in this podcast experience that I've grown in a lot. Like, I used to be a total fangirl, like, over people and authors and speakers that I admire, right? It comes to that admiration. But going through this and actually having the chance to sit down with them, I'm like, oh, you're a person too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to be nervous.
Yeah.
I don't need. So by the end of it, like last year, it's just like, yeah, here we go. Let's talk.
Yeah.
So it's been really cool to see just my growth in that and to be more comfortable and confident and like, these are people. And they're great. And they're, you know, so nice to talk to.
Yeah.
So that was a big one. I forgot what places recorded. So camp has been a big one that we recorded in. We recorded in the green room, the bridge shop. We did a recording. That's where it was.
We had Micah McDonald.
Micah.
At the bridge shop.
Dr. Tennyson. And then Carol.
Dr. Paul and Carol Alexander, the presidents at Trinity. And then you recorded with Carol Lund at the bridge shop?
Carol Alexander.
Oh, Carol Alexander. Okay.
So those were the few that were done in the bridge shop, which was so cute to be in there and to have that experience and a couple workshop rooms. And then we have also recorded a podcast in a classroom at Cedar Valley Church.
Oh, yes.
That was Kathy.
Dr. Kathy Cook. She's a parenting expert.
Yep. So she was here for the Equip conference.
Yeah.
And it was such a good idea to have her.
And I just thought of another one that was recorded in the green room at Cedar Valley Church, and that was Martha Tennyson.
Oh, so I wasn't a part of that one.
Yeah, Kristen did that episode with Martha Tennyson, and oh man, if your faith is lacking, go to that episode. She will build up your faith. You'll just be ready to take on the world after listening to her talk about her story.
Yeah.
And the amount of faith that woman had. I think she's 80 something. I don't even know. It doesn't matter, but she is a firecracker. Yeah, that's a great episode too.
That I missed.
Yeah, you should be.
I really am. I was so bummed. But I listened back to that episode and it was like, wow, she does have so much wisdom. And that was a really good episode. And it kind of reminds me, we've had a lot of missionaries from a lot of our partners. We've been able to have on that we support as BTG missions. And so it's been so cool to hear their stories. And I had the chance to talk with the founder of Inspire.
Yeah,
and
Melinda Henderson.
I remember I walked into your office after that and I was like, I feel like I want to go out and serve the world after that. Like she just really did such an incredible job captivating you just with like the love of Jesus for people. And it's really interesting. Even though we sometimes have people on to talk about the same topics, they're all different. That was one thing I was thinking about last night. Like we've had a few people on to talk about forgiveness or grief or finding hope when things are hard or missions. None of them are the same.
Yeah, you're right. I was actually thinking the same thing. So like we've had several people on that have talked about forgiveness. I know you mentioned Kristen Peterson, one. We had Joe and Jen Anderson on. They talked about forgiveness like within their marriage. Yeah. And you'd have to listen to that one. They have just a compelling story. And Kevin Ramsby, who was stabbed 37 times in his own home, working as an inner city pastor in Detroit. And they live now here in the Twin Cities, but him and then Melissa Coleman has just a riveting way to look at how to walk through forgiveness. Like she takes you step by step how to walk through forgiveness. And she's a local attorney here in the Twin Cities, and she's been on Susie Larson's podcast and has shared as well. So so this theme of forgive, we've had several people on and no story is the same.
Nope.
The principles are the same, but the application and the story is different, and those are good ones.
Yeah, you really just take something away different from it for every one of those conversations. It was Kevin's story. That was actually one of my memorable podcast moments that I wrote down, because when he was sharing his story, I just was sitting here and I probably needed to check my face, because I just was like shocked and I could not believe what he was saying. Yeah. His story, I think I was like, how did you survive that? Like how... And then he goes on and shares more of a story. I don't want to give anything away because I want you all to go and listen to it if you haven't already. But just the forgiveness that he walked through, it was just like a really real moment for him. Like, how did you do that though? Yeah. Because I don't think I could. Yeah. And he just has such a cool story. And he'll actually be the speaker at Single Moms Retreat 2026. Yeah. And I'm super excited for just what the women are going to take away from that.
Yeah. So another little fun fact, Kevin and I knew each other as teenagers. And we both became believers around the same time in the same youth group. We were both not living for Jesus, probably around 17, 18 years old, and both became believers around the same time. And so we go, and that was in Illinois. So we go way back. So I've known Kevin a lot of years, and so watching his story unfold and his application of forgiveness, he now works on death row often down in Texas and walks inmates through the forgiveness of God for them and God's love for them. And he just has such a heart and passion for people. He just loves people. So anyway, that's a great podcast. We're telling you about, you're all going to be so busy going back and listening to old podcasts. I hope you're adding
to your queue as we're talking about them. But I think the last, memorable moment that I wanted to share was my first episode with Susie Larson. And so one of the fun facts is that Susie has been our most interviewed guest on the podcast. Okay. And, every year she's been on. So 4 times, and we have another live podcast with her scheduled coming up at Thrive this year. So you definitely want to be there for that. We did that for the first time last year at Thrive, just to see who would want to come to this. We had ladies driving from Kentucky just to come and hear this live podcast with Susie. Yeah. And I thought that was so cool. And we packed the place out. There was over 100 people in there, and they were all so excited. And it was such an awesome atmosphere. Like the live atmosphere just brings it to life. So I'm super excited to do that again with her this year.
So if you haven't bought your Thrive ticket yet, you go to BTG, like Bridging the Gap, BTGThriveConference.org, and you can add that podcast as an add-on. If you've already bought your ticket, but you haven't added that on, you can go in and modify your ticket. If you have any questions on that, email us here. So you can email MN, like Minnesota, BTG.reg, R-E-G, at gmail.com. There's not a dot in between. It's mnbtgreg@gmail.com. So email them if you need help figuring out how to modify your ticket because we want everybody there because it's so fun to hear from Susie.
Yeah. And so the first time I had the opportunity to talk with her, it was over Zoom, and we were going to be discussing her Advent devotional. Yes. And it's Prepare Him Room.
Prepare Him Room. Okay. It's beautiful too.
Beautiful. I loved going through it. And it was a really big moment for me. And I don't know if Susie knows this. I've never told her, but Susie was actually a big part of my mom becoming a believer. So it was at a conference that she spoke at a long time ago. Just shows you how long she's been in ministry and doing amazing work. But it was her sharing, just journeys of forgiveness and healing that was just a huge point in my mom accepting Jesus into her heart. So when I was getting ready to talk to her, I just felt like all of the emotions in that moment of like, wow, would I be where I am at today if it wasn't for her stepping into obedience and speaking into the lives of all of these women? And I think it was actually a message where she got up there, because my mom's told me the story, and she looked at everyone and said, I was supposed to share something, but I feel like the Lord's telling me I need to preach on something different. The Holy Spirit just lit up the place, and people were finding healing and freedom and things like that. So it was just so impactful for me me. And to now, over the last 4 years, have like built a friendship with her.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're sitting there preparing for our podcast. She's like, how are your boys? How are this?
Yeah.
You know, how's this going? It's just really, really special for me.
She's the best. Yeah. She's the best.
So what have been some maybe other memorable moments that you've had and taken away from the podcast?
You know, I knew you were going to ask that. And so I started going back through the podcast list the last week or so. And it was kind of fun. I referred back to a podcast episode very early on that you had with Carol Lund, my predecessor. So Carol was in this role for 25 years before me. It'll be 4 years for me this fall. But I heard her talking about the beginnings of the Thrive Conference and her heart for it. And it was just a wonderful reminder for myself of just what we're all about. And so it's always good to just make sure that we're aligned and moving in the direction that we should be. And so it was a great reminder. There's too many favorite episodes, too many, and we've mentioned so many of them. Yeah. I would say all of those are like favorites of mine, or like great topics, things I enjoyed, themes that I enjoyed. I really loved when I'm going to mention Carol again. So we did a podcast with Mykelti about healthy transitions in leadership. And that was really fun to do, just personally, and especially to just for people to hear from us, like how the transition was going and how it was, and to just speak real clearly and freely. And Carol and I have a super open relationship, and so we were able to just share really openly over that season of transition, and shared with the listeners a lot about, like, it's not always perfect, but that was fun. That was just a really, really meaningful one for me, for Carol and I to just get to kind of share with everybody about kind of a little bit of a peek. You know, I want to say like behind the curtain, so to speak, but that's kind of it. Like everybody is kind of wondering, like, how is this transition going? And so that was a fun one for me personally to be a part of.
Yeah, and that one actually is on video. And so that is available on our YouTube channel.
That's
if you want to go and see it. It's short. It's only like 15 minutes because we wanted to play that at the leadership conference. It was the first event after Carol announced her retirement and you were stepping in. And so we actually played that at the conference.
Oh,
and
I forgot
to give
about
people
that.
a little bit. It's just coming back to me now as we're talking about it. But that was so cool to be able to do it that way. And I know that was important for Carol to be like, I am passing this baton on and I'm so excited about it. And, you know, this is what we're doing. And to really just like usher you in and things like that. So that is a video that you can go and watch.
I forgot about that. That seems like so long ago, but yet not. So it's been almost 4 years. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any other moments?
Oh, man. I feel like I've mentioned so many. I don't know that I've got any off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think, you know, I was thinking through a few more too, just to get people really looking back, because that's really the point of this. So you all can remember all the great episodes. And we have grown so much as a podcast over the last 2 years that I'm sure there's so many people listening right now. They're like, I didn't even know that was a podcast, or things like that. So it's a perfect reminder to go back. A few other that were really impactful for me, Dr. Carolyn Tennant was on.
Yeah.
And she talked about the Holy Spirit. I have a minor in Bible and theology. And still, when I sat and I listened to her teach, I feel like she opens my eyes to so many new things. And it was in 30 minutes, just like a wow moment. So you got to go back and listen to that one. And then Gabrielle McCullough, she was 22 when she came to speak at Thrive. Yeah. And she walked into that arena and just, wow, fire, literally fire. And so then she came back and had a podcast with me, and she talked about radical faith. And it was just so amazing to hear her talk about it, and her humility and her knowledge and her wisdom, and just inspiring for me to be like, God does not look at age. Like, he uses anybody willing. And it just was really encouraging for me to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. She's an incredible guest.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are so many more, obviously, that we could jump into, but I think those were just a few that, you know, when we're talking about too, like practical episodes, there's been a really good amount, and like leadership ones. Like I mentioned Doug Bogley, and actually his episode was really empowering for me too, because he was talking about how do church leaders support filling new believers and seasoned believers at the same time? Because I think that's a problem that a lot of churches are like, okay, how do we do this? Do we have kind of a good surface, Sunday service and then a deeper on Wednesday? Do we just do it all? Like, what do we do? And he was, again, praying about it, that perfect person to tackle that. So I was so excited to have him in, and he just did such a good job. So definitely go back in the future and listen to that. But I know we're getting close to the end of our time here, but I'm just curious, has there been anything just about this podcast that's really just helped you like personally in your faith journey?
Oh, I love the kind of the depth and breadth of the guests that we've had. And so for me personally, I find it incredibly inspiring to hear people. So the thing that a podcast does that you don't get oftentimes from a stage from somebody is you get to listen in on a real personal conversation that they're having in a room that is a quiet room with one other person. And so you get to sometimes feel like a little bit like a fly on the wall, and feel like you get to know people a little differently than you would from a stage. So that's something personally I feel like I've really enjoyed, because there's so many people we've had on that I really admire and respect. And that's been really fun to hear. Like even, like I think about like listening to Dr. Scott and Karen Hagen walk through talking about 2020, like leading a university and how tricky and difficult that was. Yeah. And that and I've heard him talk about that in public settings, but it just landed a little bit differently in a private conversation. So for me personally, I've really enjoyed feeling like a little bit like a fly on the wall. So, yeah.
And I think that's, one of the things that I wanted to share too, were just like some of the testimonies from people. And it means so much to me when people stop me at events, and even they're like, you don't know me, but I just have to share this of like what this podcast meant or things like that. And what we're doing here is not just creating another space to listen to the sound of my voice or interview people or anything like that. It is like, we are here to do kingdom work is how I see it. And we're here to talk about hard things that I know there's somebody on the other end that is sitting in their car crying because it's just hitting into their spirit or their soul, and they needed to hear that. So I love when people share that, and people, have shared things to me. I just had someone stop me at family camp and just speak to how Jenny and just that episode of Joy was exactly what she needed to hear. And then thank, me and Kristen for our vulnerability and talking about forgiveness. And I got a message from somebody talking about how Pastor Lindsay Willis, and we were talking about like just self-care and all of these aspects, and how much she in her time of just stress to the max, all of these things, desperately needed to hear that and rest, understand what rest is. Like that episode just completely spoke to her and was exactly what she needed to hear. And I had someone else message me talking about, Sarah and Dee's podcast and how like it has helped me so much in my marriage and what I'm struggling in. And I've made my husband listen to it. I've listened to it 3 times. People are really being encouraged by this and encouraged in their faith. And that's what it's all about. Yeah. Like, that's why we keep doing what we're doing.
Yep. That's the theme. We encourage, equip, and empower. And that's what you hear all throughout this entire conversation we just had. Yeah. That is the litmus test for the podcast. And I think it's encouraging and equipping and empowering all kinds of people.
Right. Absolutely. And it's done that for me as a guest, a host, and all of that, just like being able to listen. And I take something away every single time.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So as we end here, what are any dreams that you have for this podcast as we're moving forward, or dream topics, dream guests, or any of those people or things like that you would love to see as we go into this next year? Oh gosh,
you threw out too many dreams. So what are the dreams for the podcast? Oh goodness, Mykelti. I think I really wish we could have gotten Annie F. Downs on the podcast when we had her here in Minnesota, and her flight schedule just didn't work for it. Love to have Craig Rochelle again and get him on. There's a few dream guests like that would be really fun to have on. More than anything, I want to keep hearing those stories from people on how it's moving their lives, like moving the needle in their life, whether it's moving the needle on their leadership or their parenthood or their job or the ministry that they're involved in, the nonprofit that they're dreaming about. We want to hear the stories about, like Mykelti just said, you sitting in your car and not being able to get out because you had to finish a podcast because it was just impacting you so deeply in a way that only the Holy Spirit can. Yeah. And so my dream would be that we hear more of those stories. And so, Lord, that's our prayer right now is whatever it takes. Lord, you are, you're driving the boat. So we're just along for the ride. So that's my hope, my prayer for growth for this podcast are those things. Kind of a side note, and this is much less important, but we have begun having sponsors for our bi-monthly podcast. And so if you're interested in being a sponsor, we welcome you. So we want people who see the mission and vision of the BTG podcast and just want to come alongside. So if you have a God-honoring business or ministry or a book, something that you'd like to promote, we have pretty reasonable entry into the sponsorship role. So you can reach out to us about that.
Yeah.
A little commercial there.
I love it.
For the end.
That's perfect. And I think when I dream and vision of what this would continue to look like, I love that we honor everyone's story. Like you don't have to be the Carrie Newhoff or, the Bianca Olthoff to be on our podcast. Like you are the stay-at-home mom. You're the working mom. You are a pastor of a church. You know, all of these things. Yeah. And it's been so cool because I'm a firm believer that everyone has a story. Yeah. Everybody has something that God is doing in their life. And what you're going through in your life is probably going to encourage somebody else too. So I always want this to be a place that can honor that and show that and share that and just be vulnerable in it. So, and you just mentioned something I can't believe I didn't mention because it was the best day of my life of the Thrive, the live Thrive podcast. That was so much fun.
Yes.
Man, that, we just last minute were able to get Hosanna Wong and Gabrielle McCullough, Annie F. Downs, and Bianca Olthoff. And they're all like friends, which is the best part of it all. At Thrive, 20 minutes to sit and talk. And that was the best day of my life. So it's like just my dream. I loved it so much. And to hear the feedback from it too, that people loved it so much, getting to see that side of them. Yeah. And, they weren't just sitting and speaking. It was, again, like you were talking about earlier, it was a conversation. So my dream would be able to have more opportunities that come up where we can do that at events and do that at workshops. And because I know live podcast is such a thing right now and people seem to really enjoy it, and being able to just continue to have multiple people come in and share together because it just creates a fun atmosphere. Yeah. My dream guest is Lisa Harper. So she's on my list. She was here but couldn't do it because I think she showed up 10 minutes before she was supposed to speak. Her flight was so delayed.
There was a flight delay.
But I did get the chance to talk with her while she was at Thrive, but I was crying uncontrollably. So that was not the way I thought we would meet. But she found me in the midst of my tears in an altar call. So I was like, well, I guess this is the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just being real. So it's been so cool. And I just pray and can't wait to see where the rest of this podcast goes. And I thank you for your leadership over it and just believing in it and all that it can bring to people. And it's definitely encouraging, equipping, and empowering people. Yeah. So it's
thank
so
you,
cool.
Mykelti. It's fun to watch you, having watched you grow so much over the last few years. And I just think the best is yet to come. So it's hard for me to imagine you being a better podcast host. But, with God, I guess all things are possible. So,
well, that's very kind.
Anyway, I'm proud of you.
I'm
proud of you.
It's been the best. Thank you. So if you are listening today, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did and have now a large queue that you need to go back and listen to of all of the incredible episodes. And there are so many more to come. And they're getting deeper and more vulnerable. And I just love every second of it. So thank you for listening and being part of the journey. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Bridging the Gap podcast. We were honored to hear from Angie Goetz on our 100th episode celebration. You can learn more about Angie and follow her on social media at Angie Goetz BTG on Instagram and Angie Goetz on Facebook. You can learn more about Bridging the Gap at mnbtg.org or by following MNBTG on social media. And we invite you to take a moment to rate and review this podcast to help others find this resource as well. And would you celebrate with us today and share your favorite past episode? Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to being with you next time on the Bridging the Gap podcast.